we're focusing on now some of the things you might have heard about. The middle school break. That cost us 2 minutes per period, but it gave the kids roughly, I think it's 12 minutes outside after lunch. And I have to admit, I was behind it. So if we bomb miserably on some kind of standardized test, it's my fault. But I'll bet they'll be happier. And to me, that's pretty important. So, and the rationale was, when I was growing up, we had recess at Dover Sherburne. The middle school kids got out of lunch, and we actually stood right around here where this part of the building was. We went out on the field, and they wouldn't open the doors to the junior high school until that time slot was over. So we were outside. And it wasn't always perfect, but the kids were running around, and you just have to come over sometime and watch the middle school break. It is awesome. It is so good. They're playing, chasing each other, showing off for each other, the whole kit and caboodle. Sometimes you see the girls walking on the track and they're not noticing the boys right there, but you know, of course, that's all. It's like their feathers, you know, they're showing off their feathers. It's a riot. It's an absolute blast to watch, and it's been a very, very positive thing. The hashtag #WeAreDS, we are pounding that message, but we need help with it. We definitely need help with it. The connectedness. We know from our students that they don't necessarily feel strong connection with the adults in the school. Now, we highlight that 70% of our kids say they do. 70% of our kids, 72% of our kids, which is above the national level, which is around 70, 72% of our kids say they have an adult in the school they could go to if they had a problem. Now, think about safety. Keep in mind the safety question. If they had a problem, they could go to an adult in the school, 72%. That means at Dover Sherburne High School, 190 kids could not go to an adult. To me, that is a huge number. That is a concern. That's connectedness, the connection with the school. And to that end, at the high school, in the NEASC accreditation process, they have priority goals, and one is to work on student sense of belonging. So people often ask me about security. What about security? And there are things that we are doing with security, which will come out at probably at the next school committee meeting. But that's not the only answer. If we want to keep our kids safe, we can't allow kids to feel disconnected, disenfranchised, excluded. That's where the trouble begins. It really does. So, SEL standards. The state has a set of standards which we are now incorporating into our curriculum. There's more work that we can do with the social emotional learning, but I believe that those state standards can easily be Googled. And they are the CASELs. They're based on the CASEL standards. We're trying to weave these into our curriculum. But we're asking questions like, how do our counselors, how do we use our counselors, and do we have enough counselors to meet our needs? Or do we have enough adults who aren't grading, who aren't writing recommendations, that are just simply there connecting with kids? Do we have enough? And do we have enough programs in place to meet our students' needs? The cultural responsiveness training, you know that last year we had a professional day on it. It was really well received. When we talk about cultural proficiency, we are not just talking about race and ethnicity. We're talking about understanding where people come from. And we don't all come from the same walks of life. Some of us moved here from Europe. Some of us are from Boston. Some of us grew up in town. Some of us grew up in town in a big, huge mansion. Some of us grew up in town in a tiny little house with 6 kids in there. So we're not all alike, and as this dovetails, hopefully you see the connection with the hashtag #WeAreDS. Anti-bias curriculum is something that we did. Beth McCoy deserves a ton of credit for arranging this, but there was a training for how many curriculum leaders? 27 people from the school, mostly curriculum leaders and administrators, on anti-bias training and that was run by Ideas from EDCO Collaborative. It's good stuff. The feedback was really positive, and we do think it will have an impact on our students. The security audit and training. The security audit is done. The training of the faculty happened in the fall, and it was really worthwhile. It's a shame that we have to do it, but we have done that. It's not this is not the end of the line. It's not like you check the box and you say we're done with it. We actually have an emergency response team for the district that includes police, counselors, administrators, central office folks. I don't know who I'm missing, but fire. It's a large group of people, and we process our emergency response plans, and there's work we still need to do that just hasn't been done. We have to do it. And we also practice this stuff with the kids, but practicing it with the kids is always a big question mark. How much do you want to practice it with the kids? Because who usually perpetrates these things? So it's a really difficult question, and many places grapple with that. We have decided that we are, in fact, going to share with the kids that this training happened, and if there was an emergency in the building, this is what we would do. So that's happening later this year. The special education review. This is a really important thing for this school system. Within our goals, we have a resource efficiency. Because we have limited amounts of money. We don't have the Natick Mall here. We have limited amounts of revenue. And therefore, we have to be responsible and smart with the money that we do have. And so the special education review is in part about making sure that we're not being wasteful with how we deliver our special education services. But it's mostly about making sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids in the most effective way possible so they don't leave. We don't want our special needs kids to leave. I don't know if that's a surprise to anyone, but we really don't. And when kids leave, I consider that a failure. I think we could have kept many, many more kids. And so it's a priority to us to have our programs examined to see that we have the right kinds of programs. We can look at the data and see what are kids leaving for. How many kids are leaving for LBLD, language-based learning disabilities? How many of our kids are leaving because they're on the autism spectrum? How many of our kids are leaving because of social emotional issues? We can see that data. We know. So we are going to be smart about how we apply our funds so that we're being more practical. We also want to work between Dover and Sherburne. It's just a river between us. We're not that different. We could work together on some of these programs potentially. So we're looking forward to the report from the auditors. They gave us a report on our administrative structure within special education, and we are planning to do a reorg. It's not major, but the biggest piece that you need to know is there's greater supervision of the special education teachers, of the special education aides, of the team process. There's better close supervision of that, and I think that's a good thing, by people who are trained in special ed. And then the educator evaluation process. We've spent a lot of time with the principals and did some training with them this summer on the evaluation process.